All right, my friends, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. Let me ask you a question. Has there ever been a point in your life where you feel like you've missed your timeline? In other words, you believe that you should be further along or in a different place than where you presently find yourself. Like, I'm insinuating that you could be going through it now, and that's a very real thing. And if you have felt that way, and if you are feeling that way, how do you stay grounded? Leave your response down below in the comments. I'd love to hear them. But let me give you my thoughts on all of this, because while I do not feel that way now, I did when I was 40 years old. Back when I'm 55 now, but back when right before I turned 40 years old, I decided to take my family on a vacation. Now, all my kids were very, very young. They're all grown now, but they were very young then. And we had an old Dodge Grand Caravan, and I had this bright idea of taking my kids from Florida to Minnesota in the van because they had never been out of the state. I wanted them to be able to see more than what they're used to seeing. So we all hopped in the van. We drove up there, stopped off in a few states to show them, where I'd grown up, and got to Minnesota. And when we arrived at my brother's house, his house was so nice compared to the house I was living in. Now, let me give you a little bit of context here. My brother is 4 years older than me. He owns his own salon. He's been doing that since he left high school. He's very successful. And when we pulled up to his driveway, I was like, wow, this is such a nice house. Went inside, and I'm like, I could never afford this. And, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I guess it was because I was turning 40. I was really reflecting on my life at that point, and I felt suddenly extremely disappointed with myself. And I sat there in the bedroom, on the edge of the bed, on the second floor. I don't know if I was feeling sorry for myself, but I was reflecting deeply, and I felt so sad. I felt like I had let my family down. My brother and his wife, they don't have kids. They can't have kids. And here I am with 4. I'm the only boy out of 4 boys in our family. I'm the only boy who has any kids. I have the kids. And I was pinching every penny I could at that point. I felt like I had put my best foot forward. I felt like I should be further along. I didn't think necessarily that I should swap places with him. That's not it. But it made me think. The thought literally went through my head, what did I do wrong? Where have I gone wrong? My brother has done this. Why couldn't I? We could point to a lot of things, like, for instance, well, he stayed in the same trade for all those years, and he's more business-minded than me, and so on and so forth. But you don't have to have all those things, and the list goes on and on. Some of those things might be right, some might be wrong. But the way I was thinking about it was wrong, and I just felt very glum. For the first 2 days I was there. In fact, I was getting sick also. That might have contributed to it. But I remember it was a very strong thing for me at the time. And I just felt like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have this thing figured out. Something's horribly wrong. And I was not very grounded during that time. I had a very difficult time coping. So I've learned a few things since then that I hope I can pass on to you, and maybe you can pass on to others. If you haven't gone through it yet, refer back to this video at some point in time, because you may need the points I'm about to give you. It's extremely important. I wish somebody could have done that for me. Later on, after I talked to my brother about it, it had probably been a couple years after that happened, I said something to him about that, and he says, well, I didn't think about it that way at all, Greg. There are people who would have loved to have what I had. 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. I hit the lottery. But, there's a lot of takeaways. So the first thing I want to point out to you is that A timeline is an illusion. We grow up imagining when we're going to be successful, when we're going to settle down, when we're going to achieve this, that, and the other. We have these ideas of when that's supposed to occur. And sure enough, things do not unfold the way we think they're going to. I will tell you something about life. Life unfolds on its own terms. Okay? It unfolds on its own terms. And how it unfolds for one person may not be how it plays out for another. Okay? What you ought to do is sit down and think to yourself, or ask yourself, where did this arbitrary timeline come from that I have for me? Is it realistic? Is it grounded in truth? Because it may not be. Chances are you didn't know a thing about what you were talking about when you had all these ideas in your head. The main thing to remember about this is that the timeline is made up. It's pressure that you put on yourself. It's not something that somebody else has done. You've done this to yourself. Now, you might be able to point to the expectation of family or friends or school or whatever. But the truth is, it's whatever you've accepted. And you need to take personal responsibility for that and question that you might have been wrong about it the whole time. The second point is comparison is a trap. And it's one I fell into hard, really hard. I compared myself to my brother, and I think all of us do it to some degree or another. And social media is where we see it the most often. People post their highlights. They try to fill you with inspiring stories and look at me and I'm a hustler, and if you're not doing what I'm doing, you're a beta male, so on and so forth. You can't listen to stuff like that. You've got to realize that we all have different paths and different seasons. So realize that sometimes we feel behind not because we are, but because we're looking sideways. And the third point here is that progress isn't always obvious. It's not. You might be making strides that you're not even aware of. Everything that you're experiencing, even the low moments and the horrible feelings that you might have, brewing around inside of you, all those things might be setting you up for something much greater. In fact, much greater than what you could have even anticipated. It could leave you feeling happier and stronger in the end, and in ways that you hadn't even planned on. So think about it. Bloom where you're planted. Allow things to take root and germinate, and let life play itself out. Just enjoy what you're doing. Don't compare yourself to others. Have things that you're interested in and work toward those things, and stop worrying about being in a rush, and get rid of the ideas of what success is. I mean, that's ultimately what we're thinking about here, is success in some shape or another. And the truth is, we really don't even know what's good for ourselves most of the time. God has a plan for you, and you might be getting in the way of it by looking at everybody else instead of paying attention to what's right in front of you. So being present in the moment, not thinking too much about the future, and not dwelling on the past, and not brooding on the present as though it's etched in stone. It's not. Things will change. We have all sorts of ideas of how we want things to work out, especially when you have a family, like I did at that time. My kids were very young. I had these visions of what kind of people they'd grow up to be, what kind of decisions they'd make, what paths they would forge. Most of the time, it never goes down that way. And it can be really disappointing if you expect it to. And even just from a parenthood point of view, we might be real disappointed if we think that we did something wrong on that account, when the truth is, we never had any control over it anyway. Okay? Sometimes your kids make better decisions than you thought they would. Sometimes they make horrible ones from which you wonder if they're ever going to recover. But you have to remember, life unfolds at its own terms, and things have a way of turning around or changing direction. Some things are going to be good, some things are not going to be so great, but you have to accept it. Get the arbitrary guidelines out of your head and just settle down a little bit. Just relax and realize that you have more than you probably deserve. And I mean that. You probably have more than you deserve. And whoever you might envy, whoever you might be comparing yourself, might be looking at you, wishing that they had what you had. Okay. So that's my story. And that's the truth about me. So leave a comment down below and share your experiences and something you struggle with, because it might help somebody else who takes the time to read your comment. I know I've gleaned a lot from the perspective of many people who have left comments on any number of forums, and so I'd appreciate it if you would do the same. Be respectful, be kind, be considerate. I hope you've enjoyed this walk. I hope you've gotten something out of it. I wish somebody would have told me this stuff a long time ago, but I didn't have that luxury. Either that or I wasn't listening. So on that note, I'll leave you to brood over this on your own. I'll catch you in the next one. In the meantime, be wise.